Hey, this decade's almost over. Can you believe it? I certainly can't. We're going to talk about the best video games of the 2010s. This is a list that we published a week or two ago. It's full of wisdom and sage words, and if you are interested remotely in the art and or hobby of video games, I recommend that you look. Actually, you do whatever you want. I don't care. So hey, we're going to go ahead and run down the top 10. The list is the top 100, which I don't have the lung capacity to read all 100 of those off today. We're going to just focus on those top 10 games, the ones that touched and moved us the most. By us, I mean me, my assistant editor, Holly Green, who unfortunately could not be here as she lives literally the opposite corner of America in a town called Seattle. But we're going to talk about this top 10 right now. And number 10 from 2013, it's called Gone Home. This is Fulbright's moving story of a young girl, a young woman realizing who she is, using sort of the expectations of a horror game to set the player at unease while exploring through this house and realizing that there's nothing horrific here at all, just the minutiae of everyday life. Number 9 is Portal 2. This is probably the best example I can think of a sequel taking what made an original game work and blowing it up into a massive new scale. Not only is it much bigger and longer and has far more ways to interact with and solve puzzles, it's also a funnier game with the inclusion of Stephen Merchant, along with the original voice actress from the first game. Number 8 is Super Mario Odyssey on the Switch. There's a healthy dose of nostalgia involved in video games, and I always hate to say that the latest 3D Mario is the best, but that's kind of been true throughout history. As great as Super Mario 64 was, well, maybe not Sunshine. I don't know if Sunshine was better, although it felt that way at first. But obviously, Super Mario Galaxy in 2007 was worlds better than Super Mario 64. And as much as I love Galaxy and Galaxy 2, I think Odyssey at this point is the best 3D Mario game ever made, and probably the best Mario game since Super Mario Brothers 3. If you don't own a Switch, it's probably worth buying just for this game. Number 7 is one of the most influential games of the decade, From Software's Dark Souls, which came out in 2011. This is sort of the game that mainstreamed some of From's typical tactics that we first saw in America, at least most famously in Demon's Souls in 2009. Dark Souls had that same intense difficulty, that unforgiving brutality, the way that if you died, you pretty much lost everything you had unless you were able to get back to it before dying again, the way the whole, like the campsites work in terms of save points that maybe restore you to a point, but you still have to fight through every enemy again. It's a very difficult but powerful game. It's very cryptic. It is mysterious in a good way. And that's Dark Souls, and so many games since have been influenced by that. Number 6 is kind of brand new. It came out in August. It's called Control. I know this might seem like we're reaching here, but Remedy's Control is one of the most brilliant games I've ever played. You can make all sorts of comparisons to other TV shows, or to TV shows if you'd like Twin Peaks or The X-Files, but it's way more than just a bunch of references stapled together. It's a fascinating look at control and the mundanity of bureaucracy and how that can interface with the everyday lives of people like its hero, and also it has that supernatural feel to it that elevates it into something very unique. Number 5, from the very first month of the decade, it came out in January 2010. It's a Mass Effect 2. This might have been the first game I ever reviewed for Pace. I don't remember. I know it was definitely back when it was still a print magazine. And this one is a sprawling space epic. It is one of the few games that, even though it takes dozens of hours to finish, you don't really feel it. It doesn't seem to have a lot of fat to it. It's like watching an entire season of a TV show where you get to make a lot of the decisions. It has a fantastic cast of characters. And even almost a decade later, I have played probably over 1,000 games since then. I still remember this one very clearly, and that's despite having absolutely no time to ever play any game more than once. Number 3 is Kentucky Route Zero. This is, it's still not finished yet. It's been released episodically. It's been a few years since they've had an episode. They put out, I think, 4 between 2013 and 2016. We're still waiting on the 5th one. This is sort of a kind of like a classic adventure game, like a point and click, but it again has a very unsettling David Lynchian type atmosphere to it. It's so much more than just an adventure game. It comments sort of on the human condition and America's own sense of itself, sense of myth making. It's kind of its own myth all of its own at this point, and hopefully it'll complete soon. Number 2, this was a hard pick for me. The top 2, I mean, I love both these games. I think they were both perfect at what they try to do. Number 2 is Thumper. This is the rhythm game by Mark Fleury and Brian Gibson of the band Lightning Bolt. It is unlike any rhythm game you've ever played, or really any other video game you've ever played. Most rhythm games, they try to recreate sort of like what it feels like to be at a nightclub almost. You got like this pulsing electronic music, usually kind of happy, uplifting kind of pop music. Thumper is not about that. It's about claustrophobia, paranoia. It's trying to scare you both with its visuals and its music, which is this heavily percussive score. It's not as noisy as Lightning Bolt, but it's like I could see this if it was a record being on Load Records. It has a similar aesthetic to it. And it is, I think, pretty much a perfect video game. It has a specific concept in mind, and it accomplishes it about as well as anyone possibly could. And it's equally good in VR and without VR. I mean, I actually prefer it probably without VR, only because it's difficult to get the whole VR setup going, but both are a great way to play Thumper. And then number 1 is maybe predictable, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It came out on 2017, the launch day for the Nintendo Switch. As I wrote in our list, if you view video games as adventures that are appealing because of the mystery they bring to you while you're like learning how to play them and experience them, then this is maybe the best game ever made, because nothing has ever been, I think, as mysterious or full of that sense of adventure as Breath of the Wild, where they basically just sort of set you loose in this massive 3D environment, this new version of Hyrule, and let you find your own way. It is a gorgeous game. It is a beautiful game, and it's a game that I actually played for well over 100 hours, which when you have the sort of schedule I have is really hard to do. So that's it. Those are the 10 best games of the decade. If you want to see the other 90, you can click over to Pace Magazine, look at the games section. You'll see it somewhere on the page. And thanks again. If you have any comments, I guess, I mean, keep them to yourself if you can. All right. Well, no, you can leave them, I guess. Maybe someone will read them. I don't know. But thank you very much. Have a good day, and I'll talk to you soon.